Good morning, Philadelphia. Oh, that was awfully lame. Good morning. How are you? That's better. Thank you, David Foster, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you at the beginning of what I know is an amazing opportunity to continue to build on relationships and partnerships across the whole spectrum of people who care about, who work for, who pray for, who worry about the intersection between creation, jobs, and justice. And I got to say, as we move into the week of Passover and Easter, I was profoundly touched by Reverend Robert McClellan's opening reflection, opening prayer. It is rare that I go to a public event where I'm sitting there going, yeah, to every single element of an opening prayer, and where I am reminded so powerfully about the importance of finding ways to come together. This joint effort of the Steelworkers and Sierra Club, now expanded to many other unions and environmental groups, is one of the most encouraging things I know of in our country. And I'll tell you, I'm not the only gift from Delaware today. You're also going to get to hear from Ann Canby and from Irish John McCluskey. Ann Canby, our former Secretary of DelDOT, and Irish John with the Steelworkers, with the District Council for Railway. They're going to be talking about transportation infrastructure and how, as you heard from the president of the Sierra Club, how investing in rail makes enormous sense, not just for putting steelworkers to work, not just for creating a better transportation infrastructure, but for making our environment cleaner and healthier and our country stronger. To David Foster, that's exactly the sort of thinking together across old divides that excites me about the Blue-Green Alliance. And to Leo, I'm sorry that Leo Gerard is not with us today, but I trust, Dan, that you'll give him my best and my thanks for your leadership and for everything that the steelworkers are doing to fight for high-quality union jobs, not just here in Delaware and in Pennsylvania, but all over the United States, where not just the middle class is under attack, but the very right to organize, the very right to exist for America's middle class has been under assault for the last 2 years, and I believe we are turning that tide, and we will see this year and this fall a fundamental reaffirmation of what today is all about. That Americans of faith, that Americans who are motivated by concerns for justice, that Americans who care about our middle class, that Americans who care about our national security can and should all come together around the shared agenda of the Blue-Green Alliance. There are good things happening in Washington. I know this may come somewhat as a surprise to you. I've managed to work hard my whole life and finally get to a place where my mother is proud of what I'm doing in the United States Senate, but apparently nobody else is. In a recent survey, the United States Senate was ranked as having a 9% approval rating. 9%. That is well below the IRS and well below Nixon during Watergate. As a colleague just said to me the other day, that means we're down to paid staff and blood relatives, and I'm not so sure about my family anymore. Part of what I wanted to share with you today was a reminder that we can get things done, even in this toxic, paralyzed partisan environment, and to talk a little bit about a few of those things. Within the Federal Department of Energy, there is an innovative, forward-leaning group called ARPA-E that the Obama-Biden administration launched, funded, and has really moved forward, that is making critical cutting-edge investments in technology all across the energy space. Energy efficiency, to me, is one of the most exciting because it's got near-term, real prospects for putting people to work, for reducing emissions, and for improving our energy profile as a country. There's a company in Delaware called White Optics that we have recently visited, the governor and I, that's a lighting technology company that simply applies a long-known DuPont product to make LED and CFL light bulbs 40% more efficient by increasing how much light gets reflected out of these recessed ceiling floodlight cans. Simple, common sense, and frankly, would put a lot of people to work. One of the challenges I think we face, as you heard at the outset, is communicating to the broad range of Americans that green jobs aren't some propeller head fiction. They aren't some space-age Jetsons ideal that will only come into play a decade or two from now. That if we actually invest as a country whether it's in transportation infrastructure and energy efficiency retrofits or investments in offshore wind. We will put real people to work, electricians, sheet metal workers, and steel workers. And that's a message we need your help in getting out to the average American. I went to the ARPA-E Summit in Washington and spoke recently. There were 240 new inventions unveiled at that annual conference. 240 different ways that national labs, academic researchers, private sector scientists, and investors are pulling together to bring new solutions to market. The only thing that's missing from the ecosystem of innovation around energy is policymakers, is a coherent, common agenda by the Congress, the Senate, and the administration. The administration, as I said, in creating ARPA-E, has laid out a clear agenda and a clear vision. It is in the Senate and the House that we are failing to come together on the Energy Committee, on which I serve, on the Budget Committee, on which I serve, to put in place the kind of policy framework and agenda that makes it possible for us to move forward. I believe in the possibility of our working across lines, in part because of my own experience, education, and background. Trained in chemistry, I'm someone who worked in the private sector for a highly innovative materials-based science company in Delaware for 8 years. Also trained in divinity with an ethics degree, I believe deeply in the values of bridging faith in the environment, a concern for creation, with jobs that are just union jobs and that also help create and sustain our middle class. The old fight between jobs and justice, between the environment and sustainable middle class, is not a fight we need to continue fighting. We all win when we bridge that gap and move forward. In the introduction, it was referenced that I believe, our governor believes, others believe, that Delaware is a model for a clean energy future. One of the pieces that we hope to offer to our country is the first deployment of offshore wind energy. Our former Lieutenant Governor, now Congressman John Carney, and our former State Treasurer, now Governor Jack Markell, worked hard over many years to build a statewide consensus that supports ratepayer-funded offshore wind deployment. And one of our challenges is, now that we've got the technology, now that we've got the rate base, now that we've got the political leadership in state, the lack of leadership in the Senate. As you may know, the production tax credit, the investment tax credit for wind, for solar, are on track to expire. And if all I told you was the negatives, I could succeed in turning smiles into frowns today by focusing on what we're not getting done in the Senate. What I'm going to try and focus on is how I'm trying to find positive paths forward that can get past the current partisanship and paralysis. I'm going to keep fighting for an investment tax credit, a production tax credit, for 48C, for 1603, for a whole range of clean energy financing vehicles and opportunities. But I have to recognize reality and where we are. When I look across the dais at energy, I've got Senator Rand Paul on the other side. I've got senators on the other side who don't think there should be a federal Department of Energy. So I've tried to listen to the criticisms of the mainstream Republican Party. We shouldn't be picking winners and losers, and we need an all-of-the-above energy strategy, and say, okay, I'll listen to your argument, and let's start seeing if we can find vehicles to finance clean energy that work within their framework. 2 quick ideas. Something called master limited partnerships. Anybody here heard of master limited partnerships? It is 2, 3, 4 hands. Good for you. I'd never heard of them before. It is an obscure tax planning vehicle that has been used for oil and gas pipeline financing for decades. It is a tax-advantaged way to amass a lot of capital and invest in a refinery, in an open mine, in a pipeline, but by statute, it is not accessible to clean energy. So I've been going to Republican senators on the Finance and Energy Committees and saying, okay, I'll listen to your argument. Let's not pick winners and losers. Why are MLPs not open to clean energy? Okay, we need an all-of-the-above energy strategy. Why are MLPs not open to wind, to solar, to geothermal, to other energy-generating technologies? And I'm getting a positive response. And I'm getting folks who say, maybe you've got a point. Maybe this is a sustainable way to finance an all-of-the-above energy strategy that helps get people back to work and that helps find a way forward for financing clean energy. One other idea. There's something called the R&D tax credit for research and development. It's long been taken advantage of by large established companies like Dow, but it is not available to startup companies. It's not something you can take advantage of unless you're an established, profitable company. So I've also been pushing the idea of taking R&D tax credit and making it tradable or refundable. Why? It's neutral to technology. It doesn't matter whether you're developing a new medical device, a new solar cell, or a new way to do fracking. It really is neutral to technology. And it's accessible only to late-stage established companies. If we change it, it allows us to sustainably finance early-stage companies. I think both of these are possible pathways forward past the current fractured partisan Senate around clean energy. Make no mistake, I believe in a clean energy future. There will be a clean energy economy. The only question is whether American towns, American jobs, and American workers are going to be at the forefront or are going to be watching from the sidelines. The only question about our clean energy future is whether we're going to seize the moment to keep driving it forward through the elections this fall and through policy innovations, or whether we're going to let this blow past us and see the people of Russia and Brazil and China take the commanding lead in making a clean energy future real. I am convinced this is an important moment for leadership for all of us. In the Senate, in the House, I know you'll soon hear from a great Congresswoman, Allison Schwartz, and in municipal and state leadership. Your mayor, Mayor Nutter of Philadelphia, is a great and thoughtful and insightful leader and someone who understands the opportunity for jobs and for the integration of a concern for environment and for investment. And I'm going to leave the stage in a moment so you can hear him give more thoughtful and more insightful comments than I've delivered so far. I just wanted to leave you with one recent encounter I had that was powerful and that reminds me of Reverend McClellan's opening prayer. In the country of Colombia in South America, when the conquistadors landed 500 years ago, a pre-Columbian tribe called the Kogi retreated up into the mountains above Santa Marta. Santa Marta, which I'd never heard of, is the only place on earth where an 18,000-foot mountain, a mountain so high it has glaciers on top, is right next to the ocean. Google it. From the Caribbean to the top of this mountain is less than 30 miles, and it is a soaring, snow-capped peak, or it was. And the Kogi have lived in an unchanged culture for 500 years. First a few thousand feet up, then more than 5,000 feet up, and ultimately in the very upper reaches of the Santa Marta Mountains, as they have tried to insulate themselves and their culture from the encroachments of the modern world. When the drug wars of Colombia finally prevented them from their peaceful sanctuary, when FARC guerrillas and government troops started landing by helicopter in the highest reaches of these mountains, their tribal elders decided that their very existence was at risk. And they sent some of their youngest people all the way to the bottom of the mountain to learn Spanish, to understand the outside world, and they've sent one emissary to meet with the United States Senate. I sat with Senator Shelby and Senator Leahy, a Republican and Democrat, as we listened to a representative from this ancient tribe. And they had a simple message for us. You think we are illiterate. You think we know nothing. You think we live barefoot on the tops of mountains in a remote country. But we are a tribe that has lived the same way for 5,000 years. And we know things about the rhythm of creation, about the boundaries of animals, and about how plants mature, and about our mountain. We don't know what you've done, but you've done something horrible. Because for the first time in thousands of years, the glacier on top of our mountain, which we call our mother, is melting and disappearing. And for the first time in 5,000 years, the animals, the plants, are shifting and changing to places they don't belong and in ways we don't recognize. So we've sent this emissary from Colombia to you in the United States Capitol to say, listen to us. The earth is speaking to us and telling us, you must change. I turned to Senator Leahy afterwards and said, you know what haunts me is that I know Another group of Native Americans spoke to another group of senators 100 years ago. And I'm sure they made solemn pledges to listen to them and to respect their traditions and to not wipe them out or take them off their land. And then they broke their word. We need to listen to those who are seeking to teach us that the harmony that the Blue-Green Alliance represents is a harmony that is demanded by creation and is a harmony that can make possible jobs and justice and a productive future for all of us. Thank you for what you'll be doing together here today. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the very real challenge you pose to all of us in the Senate to get good things done. Thanks.